Today's episode of Filmmaker U is brought to you by our sponsors OWC. Go to owcdigital.com for all your filmmaking and computer needs. And it's also brought to you by our other sponsors, AJA. Make sure to check out aja.com so that you can see how they can help you in your post-production needs. Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com, or of course, follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. Every week we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by colorist Anthony Raffaele, whose work includes Mr. Mayor, The Get Down, and Awkwafina is Nora from Queens, just to name a small amount of his work. Welcome to the show, Anthony.
Welcome. Thank you.
So I got your bio, and there was something that immediately jumped out at me, and I was like, I have to ask him about it. You worked with Vittorio Storaro.
Yeah,
I've like.
So I've
any stories, anything you can tell us?
Yeah. I mean, so he's like, I would say he's one of my like mentors in life personally. I started working with him in I want to say 2016, 17. We did a film called Café Society. And then from there, I've done 4 or 5 films with him since then. And it's just awesome working with him. It's an amazing thing because, you know, you work with a lot of people, but no, a lot of people don't necessarily have that clout or, you know, that ability to command a show the way he does. And, you know, one of the, I would say the big takeaway I've gotten from him was that you always be thinking about the story. It's a constant thing for him that he's always turning to me and saying, follow the story, follow the story, follow the story. And, you know, that's all part of how he sees the film. Mm-hmm. You know, how he's telling a story visually that coincides along with the, you know, the dialogue, the music, everything. Like a lot of times once we get the film together, and we spend a lot of times, we do what we call weeklies, where every week we would sit in his hotel room and watch, because I would do the dailies as well as do the finishing. And every week we would sit in his suite in the hotel, and me, the DIT, camera people, we would all just get together at his place and watch all the dailies together. We would call them weeklies, because that's what you used to do prior. And we would watch them and talk about the film. But all the time we would be talking about where the film's going and how to emphasize those things and what we could do with in the DI to emphasize all those different aspects. So
was he open? Because like it's the stories I've always heard is, like you said, he's sort of like, he's a very legendary figure.
Yes.
So it's almost like he's like Obi-Wan or something.
Yes,
so
yes.
He open to like DITs throwing in ideas and things like that, or was it?
Well, that's the beauty of when you find someone who's at the top, who's made it to the top.
Yeah.
There's no real ego involved in it. He wants your ideas. He wants your collaboration. You know, one of the things, he was the first person to ever say we're collaborating together to me. Mm-hmm. You know, he wants my input, and he wants the DIT's input, and he wants the camera person's input. He wants us to, give him ideas, try things, I'll oftentimes we'll be in the DI, we'll be working on a scene, and he'll say, oh, I don't know. I'll say, give me a few minutes. Let me give you a couple of different ways to go about this, knowing, again, where the story's going, where our actors are taking their performances, and where their performances end at the end of the show. So, I would mock up some stuff, say, hey, this is rough, but the general idea of maybe we do this or we do that. And, a lot of times he would say, this is great, this is good, or let's go with that. Or maybe he'd say, I don't really think that works. Maybe let's go back. But the collaboration with him is actually what has, in my opinion, made me a better colorist, made me a person who can take the risks in a room, and say, I think we should go with this, or maybe we should try that. That collaboration and that ability that he's given me to try things in the room has, in many ways, boosted my self-confidence.
So you mentioned he's sort of like a life mentor for you. Like how does is it like something he's aware of, or you're just picking up little tidbits from him?
No, 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 no. I mean, me and him talk pretty regularly. Every couple of months, I try and track him down. He's always a very busy person, and we'll Skype and just talk about how life's going, work's going. He'll ask me about my kids and how that's going, those types of things. Like understanding how important the aspects of your life are to the industry that we're in, is definitely something that I've also gotten from him as well.
So how do you find that balance then with life? Because I feel like the industry is so demanding.
Yeah.
In terms of time, you gotta get that family balance, right?
Well, yeah, COVID has actually done a huge, sadly, service to me. I'm working from home currently. I get to work from home a lot now. Obviously not when I'm grading in a theater, but from home working on, my monitor is an HDR monitor. I pretty much have everything I need here. So, that has really enabled me to have a work-life balance. And prior to that, it was making the moments that I have at home as special as possible and being present. A lot of people, you talk about how much work takes over their lives, even when they're not home. Even when they are home, I mean, and that's something that you really have to be present in your moments at home so that you can appreciate your moments at work. It's still work, you still monopolizes your time. It still puts a lot of stress on you. So having your family life to adjust to that is really important.
Now you've worked on some amazing projects. I really liked the Get Down. It was let down that it got
yeah.
But how do you like to approach projects when you're starting? How do you, because going back to what we were talking about before, how do you get into the story and figure out what your approach to it?
Yeah, I mean, I always like to get a cold reading of the script first. So read the script on my own, unfettered by people's. I never like to hear the pitch from the director or the cinematographer at that point. I want to read it for myself and kind of take from it from myself what I think it's about. That usually helps me to at least, and then after that, get their ideas on what the story is about. Usually not, and when I say what the story is about, I'm not talking about what the words on the page mean. I'm talking about the meaning behind the actual story, the threads that hold it together. And usually from that, I'll kind of put both my ideas with theirs and see what that visually represents to me. And then from there, the collaboration between the director and the cinematographer and myself, usually that after I've read it, maybe the look setting scenario. I love hair and makeup, even though people rarely do it anymore. It's one of my favorite things to go through because you get to you get to see what the film possibly could be at that point, with just great, throwing some looks on it and having fun with it. And then as you start shooting, once we come up with a style and a look, usually from test footage, as we're shooting, usually refining that grade during the dailies process is part of what I like to do. Hey, this looks good, but maybe if we tweak it, here or there, redeliver the dailies so that they look a little bit better, or they have more of the idea of what we're trying to come up with. And then the DI process is usually at the beginning of that is one of my favorite times. The end is always we're dropping visual effects and, people aren't there. And it's more of a, dotting I's and crossing T's type of time,
Cleanup.
It's cleanup. It's let's make sure, did we get this visual effect? What's the number? It's that aspect of it, which I think a lot of people don't think of when they think of color correction, the meticulousness of it. But the beginning is just one of my favorite parts. The first couple of days of a DI, running through it, trying different things. Those are that's like candy to me. That's the best part.
It's interesting because you mentioned the hair and makeup. And I had talked to a VFX crew whose sole job was to do hair and makeup touch-ups in films. And it's one of those things where the more you know about other crafts, the more it improves your craft. So is there something you've picked up from, hair and makeup or costumes or something that you've sort of...
Oh my God. Yeah, so much. I mean, just how materials reflect is such an interesting thing to me. And, the type of, so for me, what I think we're doing in the hair and makeup process, or the LUT building, or the look building scenario, is we're creating like a digital film stock, right? So back in the day, they would shoot hair and makeups to say, okay, well, this clothing doesn't necessarily look the way we want it to with the film stock that we're using. So you now take that in a digital way and you say, okay, we're shooting it like this with this film stock on it, and the clothing may not match what we want. So the more everyone comes together in that world and basically takes the look that we're creating and puts it and modifies their part to make that look even better, this is where the collaboration comes in. This is where everyone's coming together. And, you learn so much about how makeup affects the skin tone, how different clothing and fabrics affect the skin tone, how lens and diffusion. One of my favorite parts is the first time I ever saw a really good hair and makeup test, they had basically taken every diffusion there was in the kit, and they took it on, put it off, took it on, put it off 2-3 times. And then from there, they did it again and again throughout, after they changed lenses. And I was like, wow, this is what it's all about. Like learning how all of these different pieces affect the image. So I think hair and makeup really allows everyone in the department to see what everyone else is doing, especially when you sit down together in a big theater, and the hair and makeup that are there, the costume and wardrobe are there, and everyone can talk about what's going on in the image. That's one of the best parts that you could find.
Now, like as I had mentioned, you'd worked on different, genres, different styles. Is there a particular genre or style of film that you get excited about working on?
I wouldn't say genre or style. I mean, well, I love it when people want to take risks. I never want to be doing like a show that people are like, oh, this show looks like every other show. For better or for worse, I'd rather people go, wow, this show is different. You know what I mean? Maybe even if it was different in a bad way, I'd rather people like remember it for being different in a bad way. You know what I mean? Like real art comes out of taking risks, right? And that's always, so the idea that you're able to take those risks and other people are willing and want to be on board with that, that's usually what gets me excited about color grading. And I mean, some, like you said, some speaking of some genres do give you that ability, give you a little more leeway to that. Sci-fi, stuff like that, whereas like dramas are usually very naturalistic. A sci-fi has its own world, right? And it could be anything. So,
well, and not to harp on the Get Down, but that's what makes me think of the Get Down, because it was
very stylized.
Yeah, but also like like it had kung fu movie influences. It had drama. It had everything you could think of sort of mixed into it. So what was it like working on that project? Like what were some of the challenges that you faced?
So that was actually a really fun project. So I ended up, they had done the first like half of the first season with another colorist, and then I took over the second half because the other colorist, it had spanned so long that the other colorist couldn't do it anymore. So I ended up taking over that show, I think on episode 5 or 6. And it was just, another very big graphics driven show, very stylized, and took a lot of risks. And working on those types of shows really makes it interesting, right? You get to work with someone like Baz Luhrmann, who's, a legend in this world. You get to collaborate with a lot of people that are really doing a great job. And those types of shows really, I would say that they really test you, right? They when you're at that level, you're being pushed at a level to do better things, to come up with new stuff. There was a point where there was some visual effects that weren't really like hitting it for Baz, and we were trying different things, adding different grains and stuff like that, and blurring stuff in the background to really just focus in on certain aspects of it. And I was like, wow, I never really thought at the time, I was like, I never really thought to do one, like there's a couple of things that we did. I was like, I never really thought to do that or get away with it. You know what I mean? Like you're thinking to yourself, well, someone's going to notice that it's blurred in the background, right? And you're like, no one's going to notice, and it really brought you to this character, and it brought you to how it looked, and steadied your eye throughout the performance. And I was like, wow, those are aspects that you can take into, so you're always learning, right? You're always learning in these scenarios when you do big projects like that.
It sounds like Baz was in like a kid in a candy shop.
He is, yeah. It's a very interesting workflow. Yeah.
How do you take over for someone, because it seems like you'd want the same colorist for the whole project, and all of a sudden, as you said, this colorist had to leave. So how did you jump in and take over?
Oh, well, it's like anything. It's like, someone's got to do it, right? So there's someone, that you almost have, you get put in a scenario where you're taking over for someone. You're like, okay, this is where I'm going to be, and so you take, you meet with the clients, you look at the previous episodes, you have a conversation about where you're going and what, are we following the same tempo? Are we moving in the same direction? Is there an arc that we want to hit towards the end that we're not hitting at the beginning? All of those things are something, the questions about story, are all the things that you're asking at that point. And then, at this level, if I want this type of look or that type of look, I mean, at the level that, most colorists that you're probably interviewing are at, you can give them anything. You can really create any look that you want.
Now, is there a scene from your career, because you've had such an amazing career, is there a scene that was particularly difficult to grade, but you're really proud of the outcome?
Ooh, yeah. There was a couple of scenes in a film called Wonder Wheel that I did with Vittorio Storaro, and they were very long one-shot scenes that involved this. It was all a set. Everything was CGI outside, but it involved a lot of movement back and forth. There were a couple of different scenes where they were maybe 8-9 minutes long, where they were going from one room to another, and one of the things with Vittorio is he'll turn around and go, I think this room really needs to be more sunlit, and it's not. And so I'm rotoing through the scene as we're panning out of it, panning back to it, and coming back into it, and walking into that room and walking out of it. And there was a couple of those scenes, but the one particular, I would say, there was a scene with it was Kate Winslet, and I can't remember the other actress, but it's a nighttime scene. They both come into the room and they're both talking, and the idea was each actress had an individual color. Kate Winslet's was red and the other actress's was blue, and he wanted to peak the emotions as we were going through it, but it was never edited to match how he changed the lighting. So I had to digitally change the lighting for the scene so that at certain points red came up on Kate while the other actresses got blue. And it was just very interesting to retune the whole image, that the whole scene that way, to create this kind of up and down arc of their argument with color.
Now, you said you had to roto some stuff. Please tell me that was at the point where we could automate some of that and you weren't sitting there going frame by frame.
I would love to tell you that, but there was a lot of, when you work with someone like that, there's a lot of labor of love involved in that. So there were a lot of hours that I just spent doing things on my own to make it happen. Because that's the business, right? You're there to, impress people and work hard for other people that have given you a shot. So
now I have one last question for you. We've been stuck in this pandemic for quite a while. And in that time, depending on what's happening, you're either stuck at home because you got COVID or you're in quarantine. Is there a show or a movie you've discovered that you think people should check out?
Yeah, absolutely. So we recently started, towards the end of the pandemic, was rewatching Westworld. And if you haven't seen that show, it's just a really beautiful show. That's, it's obviously it's not a show that I worked on, but it's a show that I admire the filmmaking of it. And it's just, I had mentioned earlier to you, it's like every episode's an onion where you could just peel away different pieces. As far as like deep pandemic shows, though, I was I had a 1-year-old child at the time, and we watched a lot of Boss Baby on Netflix.
Okay.
And I don't know if you've seen this show. Probably no one has seen this show, but man, it is a really good show.
Have you seen Bluey yet from Australia?
Yes.
It's so addictive.
Such a great show.
Oh
Such
my
a great
gosh.
show. Yeah.
I feel badly for my brother-in-law because I was talking to him
watches
on the
all-
weekend, and he's like, my son won't watch it. And I was like, oh,
Yeah,
poor guy.
Yeah, you're like, you need to watch it.
Yeah,
Watch it on your own on the train.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for letting me interview today.
Oh no, pleasure. Thank you so much.
And that's it for this week. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com, and of course follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_you. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching. Today's episode of Filmmaker U is brought to you by our sponsors OWC. Go to owcdigital.com for all your filmmaking and computer needs. And it's also brought to you by our other sponsors, AJA. Make sure to check out aja.com so that you can see how they can help you in your post-production needs.